For today's episode, I have a compilation of night shift horror stories, and right now, our horror community is growing at a steady pace, so big thanks for that. I'll begin reading the stories right away, and meanwhile, subscribe to Mr. Scare and let's reach 2,000 subscribers. I work in the emergency medical services, and it is literally a 24-hour job, be it day or night. One night, I picked up the duty on the night shift. We get a call for an unknown condition at an address that gets changed like 5 times before we are flagged down by a frantic woman in front of a huge Masonic temple. She tells us that her boyfriend is the custodian there, and he is in charge of locking up every night. He texted her about 1 hour ago, saying that he had crushing chest pain and shortness of breath, and now he's not answering her texts. The door is locked, but she knows he's inside, because his car is there and there are lights that are turned on the inside. The huge wooden doors are locked, so we call for firefighters to break them down. They take like 20 minutes to smash a 12 feet tall wooden door off its hinges. Once we manage to finally enter, we realize that it's pretty spooky. I don't know if y'all have ever been in a Masonic temple before, but they're scary as shit with all the lights off. Marble floors and columns, lots of velvet curtains, and no light switches to be found. Me, my partner, my girlfriend, and 5 firemen start searching the place room by room, floor by floor. We are totally expecting to find a corpse, and possibly a ghost or two. We clear the first floor, and find nothing. We were terrified but at the same time on duty. Once the floor was cleared, we started to move up the stairs. An interesting thing about Masonic temples is that they tend to get stranger the higher up you go in them. By the 3rd floor of the temple, all of us are freaking the hell out and even jumping at shadows. Somehow we push onwards to the 5th and final floor. At this point, we were just desperate to finish the search and get the hell out of that creepy place. It gave off a very negative vibe. At this point, there is a huge spooky chandelier above us, weird symbols painted everywhere, and even the fire lieutenant is getting freaked out. The top floor consists of a big room with a long hallway leading off it. All the way down the pitch-black hallway, we can see a door that has the lights on behind it. We slowly creep towards it, none of us wanting to be first in line. Eventually, we reach the doorway, and after a solid minute of silently miming who should open the door, my partner and I agree that we'll do it together. We take a couple of deep breaths, silently count to 3, and throw the door open. As our eyes adjust to the light, we see a middle-aged man jump up from a desk, rip off his headphones, and frantically try to turn off the super hardcore porn he's been watching. He, apparently, had texted his girlfriend saying he had had a burrito for dinner. He mentioned that the food didn't quite agree with him, and she had wildly misunderstood his text. As we all fled the building, we could still hear the couple arguing as he began to wonder how we had gotten into the building and who would compensate them for their door. A fairly long time ago, I worked at a base in Japan. Now, most US facilities in Japan are former Japanese bases, and we share most of the bases with the JSDF. One particular night, I remember that I was guarding the fuel depot. No creepy spooky history to it. It was just a bunch of big hills where fuel tanks were and still are buried. There is a Japanese neighborhood just beyond the perimeter fence too. So hearing people carry on and seeing house lights are quite common in that base. Most of the watch, I sit in a guard shack, which is also the only entrance and exit point to the base. It's a big automatic gate that only I and the office has access to. But the office is locked because the fuel guys go home at 6 in the evening. So I'm locked behind the 12 feet of fence spanning a 200-yard area with only one entry point. This particular night in February, it's about 10 degrees outside, so I cringe to have to do my rounds because it's freezing outside. As I am doing my rounds, I spot what looks like a person sitting on one of the mounds. I walk up shining a light to see clearly, but I spot nothing. Then making my way to the next row, I climb up a mound and look back at the previous row, and there it is again. A person just sitting at the top of the mound. I hauled my butt over into the previous row, running about 5 mounds to where the spot is, and again nothing. I make the rest of my rounds and walk back to the guard shack. All this while, I could hear some movement around me. Also, a feeling of dread made me feel uncomfortable the whole time. Mind you, there were no people around me that I could run to. In case this was a cryptid, I knew I was in danger. And it was a military base, so no chance that a regular Japanese local just entered in and was trying to mess around with a guard. I rush my way back to the shack. I turn around and the thing, or person, or the spooky ghost is standing about 10 feet away from the guard shack. I jump inside, lock the sliding door, and just stare out the window. I really studied this thing. There are floodlights every 20 feet or so in the place, so it's actually lit up decently. At one point I get out and use the Japanese phrase we learn in security training. It goes "Tomeritsuzo," which means stop or I'll shoot. I don't know why, but to this day, that phrase wasn't doing anything. But what else was I supposed to do? It was so cold outside and it barely moved. Its hair was short and cropped around the ears. The body was average for a young Japanese adult. I couldn't tell the gender, and its clothing looked gray. The gray look might have been because of the lights above. About 20 minutes after my courageous standoff with the entity, my relief came and flashed its lights so I would open the gate. I saw the security vehicle hit the gate button and looked back and it was gone. I didn't even tell my relief because we probably wouldn't find anything anyway, and I wanted to get the hell out of there. Anyway, that's my night shift story. For a better understanding of this story, let me give you some context first, and then I will get to the creepy part. I worked at the janitorial and maintenance services for a local YMCA when I was in college. It was a brand new facility. Everything was modern and technological. All lights were motion activated to conserve energy, and every hallway had excellent camera security with audio. In this place, there was also a control room of sorts that fed all of the streams to a couple of monitors and housed the building's servers and sound systems. We used to call that room as the cave. Every year, we would have a week-long shutdown, which basically entailed all hands on deck to deep clean the entire facility. We'd do stupid shit to keep morale up, at some point while bleaching pooled grates in large 50-gallon trash cans. For example, I had to get naked to dump out the bleach water so as to not ruin my clothes. My best friend would set up ridiculous games she would invent in the gym with all the cool equipment they've got. Most importantly, we'd all get buzzed as hell on energy drinks, and we were allowed to drink alcohol if we wanted to, so long as we weren't handling heavy equipment or highly toxic chemicals. So basically, when we were doing mundane duties like mopping or scrubbing grout, we could drink freely. These shifts sometimes lasted 18 to 20 hours, because we were all broke and needed money, and it was kind of fun in between all the bitching and moaning from the stupid tasks that we were given, time and again. One night, we finished the pools and moved on to the offices. There isn't much technical shit to do in the offices, mostly just scrubbing walls, extracting the carpets, and dusting machines. As such, we designated it a chill night and brought some beer to keep the party going. All doors were propped open, including the cave door. It's well into the night and our boss ordered us pizza, so everyone is taking a break sitting in the common area in the office, cleared out for carpet extraction. This is where the creepy part of the story begins. Suddenly, I hear my best friend go,
"Nope! Hell no!"
And so we follow her eyes to the cave, and the security camera screens are flashing brighter one by one. Upon watching closely, we realize that we're watching a Zamboni tile scrubber drive itself up the hall and crash right into the racquetball court glass wall. And that's not the creepy part, because if you've ever operated a Zamboni, you know the fucker weighs almost a ton, and therefore when it's switched on, it has powered wheels to assist in pushing the monster around. We're all absolutely dreading having to clean up the resulting mess of glass, and not so subtly making plans to murder the idiot that left it on. That's when it gets creepy. Remember how I mentioned our super fancy camera system had audio recording? A voice whispers over the monitor,
"I'm sorry."
It was not a voice that we could immediately recognize. And then we realized that we're all here in the office, on the opposite side of the building. Every single one of us was here. And we have been in the same spot for almost an hour. And we had finished the pool deck already, so there was no reason to have the Zamboni out since closing up the night before. And we had already designated that night as an alcohol night, and everyone promised to not touch heavy equipment. If this was one of our own legit goofs up, whoever left the Zamboni on never confessed, and we were a tightly knit group, and word usually got around eventually. But to this day, we still don't know how it happened, or who was at fault. Nothing spooky happened ever again. At least nothing that we noticed. But we had to clean the mess up that night. We did wait until the morning as we were all terrified by the paranormal possibility. Now I'm not sure if this qualifies, but I do work at night. Being a thick-skulled teen overcharged with attitude and a loose grasp of what I should really be doing, I butted heads with my father frequently. I went to Job Corps, graduated, and got a real job. Being on the other side of a fairly large state of Alaska, and out of work, I swallowed my pride and asked for assistance from my father. I asked my dad for a place to stay, so I can escape the land of everlasting cornfields and get back on my feet. Despite actively applying and being on the delayed entry program for the military, I was on day 3 of the 3-day
No job in 3 days, you gotta go.
ultimatum given by my dad. So where does one go when you have no job, no place to stay, and don't know anyone in the state? You walk the streets because you have no car. Now here comes the creepy part. I'm walking down one of the main streets in Arizona in the winter. It being nighttime, it's also extremely cold, so I'm decked out in my traditional outfit. I just hope that nobody notices me, wearing all black with a black trench coat. I'm walking toward the local gas station to make use of the change I've accrued for my nightly meal, the 99-cent burger. And some random, scantily club-clothed lady walks past me, headed in the opposite direction. After walking about 10 feet past me, she says,
Hey, can you do me a favor?
I found that a little off, but I thought, okay, I'll bite. So I replied, it depends. She asks,
Can you walk with me? It's a few blocks to my house, but I really don't want to walk alone.
Once again it came off as a little odd, but I was like, fine. Okay, yeah, I suppose. We start walking and now I'm kinda on edge. I mean, I knew that this could very well be a bait to screw me up and take my coat or something. In another possibility, she got into an argument with her man, who's gonna show up and pull a gun on me. Either way, I'm waiting for the other foot to drop. As we walk, a few cars have passed, mostly police cars. I'm not thinking anything of it because I had been stopped like 7 times that night by random cops, stating that I fit the look of someone who pulled some stunt in town somewhere. After about 4 blocks of walking, she just says thank you and dips down a side street. The girl hadn't said 2 words to me the whole walk, so now I double back thinking screw it. I didn't get robbed or jumped, and the burger spot is open 24 hours. After 5 blocks, I was about 2 blocks away from the burger spot. I've seen a couple more cop cars drive past, and they all were at the said burger spot with their lights on. I head across the street and hit the gas station. While paying for my hot dogs, I tell the clerk, I guess the cops were seriously hungry. Dude cold looks me in the face and says,
Nope. Someone flipped out and shot the place up about 20 or so minutes ago.
I just blink in disbelief. Because about 20 minutes ago, I would have been sitting in that burger joint if it weren't for that random girl. Whoever, or wherever you are, girl, thanks, and I'm glad we got home safely. I was working night shift on a mine site that was shut down from production because the resource we were mining had dropped steeply in price. On the night shift, there were 2 blokes in the plant, a guy running the powerhouse from about a kilometer away, and me, the security or medic, and also the only lady all alone in the gatehouse. The site itself was about 1.5 hours from civilization, and even when I was on day shift, it gave me the heebie-jeebies. There was no toilet in my office, so I would have to walk across to the adjacent administration building, turn all the lights on, and walk all the way through it to use the ladies' room. I had worked in this field for a while at this point, and that too at many different sites, and I had never been worried or frightened before. And that too even when I was wandering around at night on my own in those places. But this place was different. My desk has a window, which has a direct view down the access road to the site, and as I'm sitting on my computer, I see movement out of the corner of my eye. There's a man walking down the access road toward the gatehouse at 3 a.m. in the night. My spidey sense is screaming at me, but I don't falter. I email the powerhouse and advise that I have someone at the gate who can call in and check on me in 5 minutes, and open the service window to talk to my visitor. As he gets about 20 meters from the gatehouse, he vanishes. I shit my pants. I lock all the things and call the plant asking one of the guys to come over without telling him the exact reason. He arrives and can clearly see that I was shaken. I tell him what I had just seen, to which he casually replies,
Oh, that's just Dave.
and I was like,
Dave? Who the hell is Dave?
without any hesitation, he goes,
Dave is that bloke that died in the crib room. Didn't anyone tell you the story?
Well, no they hadn't, and assuming he was just trying to freak me out, I conducted a little Google investigation, and sure enough, a man was shot nearby, and was brought by his friends to the site for help. It was written that he died in the crib room. In case you don't know, the crib room is the lunchroom. So now I don't pee for my whole 12-hour shift obviously, and close all the blinds. On my next swing, I come in on the day shift and I am doing the rosters. The night shift medic tells me in no uncertain terms. He begs,
Don't ever put me on nights here again. I refuse to do them.
he wouldn't tell me why. To which I just replied, It's okay, mate. I saw him too. Just shut the blinds next time onwards. The project that my team was working on was nearing its end. Since the deadline was near, we were pulling an all-nighter and were working till 5 or 6 a.m. for the entire week. So not the night shift exactly, but close enough. Anyways, it hits 4:45 a.m. and I decided to head off home for some sleep, and then come back in for 10 a.m. in the morning. I say goodbye to some friends and promptly begin to head back home, which is barely a 15-minute walk from my office. As I walk across the car park, I spot a guy walking on the pavement way on the opposite side. He was dressed in a full black tracksuit, with his hood up and cap down. Quite naturally, he came off as a suspicious guy, and me being kinda small, I kept my eye on him. I hit just towards the other 2 buildings on my work site, and I hear him shouting. I turn my head to look at him, and I see that he's clearly pointing it at me. He sounded very hostile, but I was unable to make out the words. I picked up the pace walking between these buildings, and decided to look back over my shoulder. And there he was, arms up in the air, and walking menacingly towards me in the center of the road. Now just for better understanding and clarity, the car park we have is very big, and there would have been no way the guy would have crossed it in a minute or 2. I mean, that was how long it took for me to be where I was, without running. This guy was definitely out to terrorize me. I've never been stalked in my life, and at this point, a dry fear came over me. Immediately, I worked out my options. Firstly, I could run. The second option was such that I could just walk to the student dorms in view and pretend to be a student locked out. The other 2 options were that I could continue walking home, or worse, turn back and head to the office. I pretty much decided all of these were moot, as I didn't want to get chased at close to 5 in the morning, or be trapped outside a building with a guy who could easily catch up to me as I stood pretending, or let the guy know where I lived. This is especially since there were a lot of dark places around that I could just see myself being dragged down by the guy. Finally, with going back to my workplace, to avoid turning back on myself and him, I'd have to walk down an even darker alleyway, which I don't like doing during the day, let alone at night. So I just kept walking, picking up my pace, not enough to be obvious, but enough for me to make some distance between us. I walked past the dorms, turned onto the main road where there were street lights, and immediately took out my phone to ring one of my coworkers. I literally blew up his phone, as I kept my other hand in my pocket wrapped around my keys, such that if it turned nasty, I would have a weapon to do some small damage. Thankfully, after 6 times, the coworker picked up and immediately ran out to where I was, all while staying on the phone with me. I ended up dashing into the first takeaway place that was open, and just stood waiting for my coworker to appear. The guy never followed me down the turn I took to get to said takeaway. He must have just carried on walking. I got walked home, and whilst I was a little nervous walking home late at night afterward, I'm not afraid of doing it again. Just a little more cautious now, and I often tell someone when I'm about to head off that I'll message them when I get home. Nothing bad has happened since then, and that was close to 2 months ago now.